Welcome back to Midnight Signal AI. It is May 15 and today's run is packed. Meta is pushing private AI chats. OpenAI is bringing Codex deeper into mobile. Google is lining up Gemini news for I/O, and Anthropic is making moves on both pricing and small business adoption. We'll also hit the Elon Musk versus OpenAI trial, plus a few NVIDIA and China angles that could shape the next phase of the AI race.
It's a good reminder that the AI story right now is not just about model quality. It's about distribution, trust, pricing, and who gets locked into which ecosystem first. The companies making the smartest moves are the ones that make AI feel more useful and more personal without making it feel more risky.
Let's start with Meta from the tech buzz. Mark Zuckerberg announced what he's calling a completely private encrypted Meta AI chat. The big idea is simple. If people are going to talk to AI about sensitive stuff, Meta wants to make that conversation feel more like a secure message thread and less like a public data trail.
That matters because privacy is one of the biggest barriers to everyday AI use. People will ask a chatbot for help with health, money, work, or family issues, but they still worry about what gets stored, reviewed, or reused. Meta is clearly trying to turn privacy from a concern into a product feature.
And strategically, this is classic Meta. If the company can make its AI feel safe inside its messaging stack, it gets a stronger reason for people to keep using Meta apps instead of going elsewhere. It also helps Meta answer a criticism that follows every consumer AI product. What exactly happens to the conversation after you hit send?
The key question is whether users will trust the promise in practice, not just in branding. Encryption claims are only valuable if people understand what is protected, what is not, and how the product behaves across devices and backups. If Meta gets the details right, this could be a real differentiator.
Switching gears to OpenAI, BreakingTheNews.net reports that OpenAI is introducing Codex to the ChatGPT mobile app. That suggests OpenAI wants coding assistance to be something you can use anywhere, not just at a desk, and not just as a side feature buried in a developer workflow.
That's a meaningful expansion. Mobile is where a lot of quick decisions happen, especially for builders who are reviewing code, checking logic, or asking for help while away from their main machine. Bringing Codex into ChatGPT Mobile makes coding support feel more continuous and more embedded in daily work.
It also shows OpenAI is still leaning hard into the idea that ChatGPT is the front door for many different tasks, not just chatting. If Codex becomes a reliable on-the-go assistant, that could deepen engagement with both developers and non-developers who are increasingly using AI to understand technical work.
And the competitive angle is obvious. Once coding tools become mobile and conversational, the battle shifts from raw benchmark bragging to convenience and habit. The company that makes it easiest to ask a question, get a usable answer, and keep moving is the one that wins more of the workflow.
Now to Google. Android Headline says Google may launch a new Gemini model at its I/O event to tackle OpenAI's GPT 5.5, and TestingCatalog AI News says Google is also preparing a Gemini Spark AI agent ahead of the same launch window. Separate reporting from digitaltoday also points to Google unveiling a new Gemini model at I/O.
That cluster of reports tells us Google is not planning to arrive at I/O empty-handed. The interesting part is that it may not just be a model announcement. The agent angle suggests Google wants to show practical agent behavior, not just talk about stronger text generation. That's where the market is heading.
Exactly. A model launch is news, but an agent launch is a product story. If Google can show Gemini handling multi-step tasks, coordinating actions, or helping users complete work with less prompting, that would be a stronger signal than just saying the benchmark numbers improved.
And Google has to make I/O count. It has the distribution advantage through Android, Search, and Workspace, but it still needs a clear narrative that says Gemini is not just present everywhere, it is actually better at helping people. That's the difference between being available and being indispensable.
Speaking of enterprise strategy, SiliconANGLE reports that Anthropic has announced a programmatic credit pool as agentic tool use rises. In plain English, that sounds like Anthropic is adapting its pricing and usage structure for a world where AI agents are making more tool calls and consuming resources differently than a simple chat session.
That's a big operational issue. Agentic AI can be much more expensive or unpredictable than standard prompting because the system may loop through tools, APIs, and intermediate steps. A credit pool approach suggests Anthropic is trying to make that usage easier to budget and easier for customers to manage.
It also signals that the industry is moving away from one-size-fits-all pricing. Once AI starts acting more like software that does work, not just software that answers questions, the billing model has to change too. Anthropic seems to be acknowledging that reality early.
And from a customer standpoint, that can reduce friction. If businesses know how credits map to actual usage, they can experiment with agents without feeling like they're stepping into a blank check. That kind of predictability is often what turns pilots into real deployments.
On a related note, AI Business reports that Anthropic is also targeting small businesses with its latest Claude release. That's a smart complement to the pricing move, because SMBs usually want the same capabilities as larger firms, but with less complexity and a much tighter budget.
Right, and small businesses are often the fastest to adopt tools that save time immediately. If Claude is being positioned as useful for customer support, drafting, research, or internal workflows, Anthropic is going after a huge market that doesn't need a long enterprise sales cycle to say yes.
The challenge is that small businesses also need clarity. They want to know what the tool does, what it costs, and how quickly it pays for itself. If Anthropic can package capability and simplicity together, it could widen its base beyond the biggest AI buyers.
And that matters because the next phase of the AI market may be less about one giant model winning everything and more about each company finding the right customer segment. Anthropic is clearly trying to be the company that feels practical, safe, and business-ready.
Now to the legal front. Al Jazeera reports that closing arguments have begun in Elon Musk's landmark lawsuit against OpenAI. Toronto Star also says lawyers for Elon Musk and OpenAI are making their final case in a trial that could shape AI's future. This is bigger than a personal feud. It's about the structure and mission of one of the most influential AI companies in the world.
Absolutely. These cases matter because they can influence how people think about the original promises behind AI labs, especially around openness, governance, and commercial pressure. Even if the courtroom outcome is narrow, the public narrative around it affects trust in the whole sector.
And Musk's involvement keeps this in the spotlight because he is both a former co-founder and now one of the loudest critics of the company. Whatever happens here, it will likely feed into broader debates about who controls frontier AI, who benefits from it, and what obligations these companies have to their founding missions.
It also comes at a time when AI regulation is still catching up. So when a case like this asks what a company promised, what it changed, and who gets to challenge that change, it becomes a proxy debate for a lot of unresolved questions in the industry.
Staying with Musk-related coverage, AOL.com is framing a broader contest as Elon Musk versus Jeff Bezos in the future of space-based AI. That's more speculative than the courtroom story, but it reflects a real theme. AI is increasingly tied to infrastructure, satellites, compute, and where the next generation of systems will run.
That's the part people sometimes miss. AI doesn't live only in apps and chat windows. It depends on energy, chips, data transport, and physical deployment. If space infrastructure becomes part of the equation, then AI competition starts to look a lot more like a full-stack industrial race.
And that connects back to NVIDIA. 24/7 Wall Street is asking whether Jensen Huang just unlocked the $50 billion China market, while CNBC reports Huang said, "President Trump asked me to come on his China trip." Put together, those stories show how central NVIDIA remains to the geopolitics of AI hardware.
China is one of the most important markets in the world for AI demand, but also one of the most complicated. For NVIDIA, even small shifts in access or policy can have massive business implications. That's why every comment from Hong gets treated like a market signal.
And the CNBC angle is especially notable because it shows how closely business, diplomacy, and export policy are now intertwined. NVIDIA is not just selling chips, it is navigating a global power struggle over who gets the computing backbone for AI.
That's why people watch Huang so closely. He sits at the intersection of technology and statecraft. When he travels, markets listen, competitors listen, and governments listen. In the AI era, the CEO of a chip company can end up shaping the narrative almost as much as the model makers.
Before we wrap, a quick connective thread. Today's stories all point to the same pattern. Meta is selling privacy, OpenAI is pushing portability, Google is preparing a bigger I/O reveal, Anthropic is refining how agents get built and sold, and NVIDIA is still the hardware gatekeeper in the background.
And the big takeaway is that the race is getting more practical. The headlines may sound flashy, but underneath them are real questions about who can make AI secure, affordable, mobile, and genuinely useful in daily work. That's where the next advantage will come from.
Stay curious, stay informed. See you tomorrow.